Today we are chatting with an industry expert, Mr. Nikita Usher, Group Marketing and Sales Manager for the Citrus Products of Belize Limited. Mr. Usher has immense trade experience in both Belize and in regional and international markets. He will share insights today with us on making it count in Caricom. Good morning, Mr. Usher.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, we'll start by asking some quick key questions to Mr. Usher, and like I said, he will share insights with us on trading in CARICOM. Can you share your export experience, particularly exporting to CARICOM?
Um, we have been in business since the early 1940s. We have been in CARICOM since 1965. And in 1992, we started off even in a more pronounced manner, making sure that the Belizean product is now stationed not only in CARICOM, but across the entire globe. We, in 2010, we launched into a value add side of the business, which included then our Tetra Pak drinks. And now we have now positioned that in CARICOM and Central America as well. From where I sit, we are in the business of citrus. We do not waste a single item out of that citrus. We have made concentrated juices out of the juice that we extract. We have extracted all the pulps away from that product. We have taken out all the oils and essences out of it, and we have taken the waste and converted it into a value add product referred to as citrus feed. All these products, including the value added juices in Tetra, are marketed across the globe.
Okay. What are some key considerations when selling into CARICOM?
Particularly in Europe, when we moved products into Europe, a shift occurred in the early 2000s when we started to see movements towards having certification becoming a key component to exporting your products into Europe. The US was similar. And now we're starting to see CARICOM following in similar suit, requiring us to have a certified, accredited certification on the products that we're saying that we're producing. And that has been one of our major key points, and we've been able to develop that over the years. It's very costly, but that has been a key selling point for our products across the globe, and now CARICOM is following behind.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on those types of certification that is being sought by the market?
And it deals with not just food safety, but also the quality of the food that you're actually putting in the market. So while initially we were only concentrating on the laboratory tests of the products that we produce, it is far and more beyond that now, where we are actually tracing from the point of that product entering the containers. Those containers has to be sealed when we receive them. We do inspection of those containers. They're sealed when they're outgoing from Belize. The product that we produce, from the point of production to the point of traceability of that product, all the way down to the farm that it came from. We must now know what that farmer is using inside their fields, what chemicals they're using. Is it on a ban list of chemicals? Is it going to be traced inside our product? These are how severe it has now become in ensuring that the product that you're producing is safe for human consumption.
Okay. What are some of the easiest aspects of selling into CARICOM?
And so I think that makes it very easy to move in there. Most of our CARICOM countries are English speaking. And so our labels and all the rest of it can align with what they're requiring in their marketplace. That makes it very easy. If we go into a French region, then our labels and our products have to change to a French label. and that makes it a little bit more difficult and a little bit more costly for us, because then that's not what our language is. So the English being the same language is not a barrier for us. That makes it almost the easiest component for Belize.
Can you now switch and talk about some of the most challenging aspects?
Who would want to have the products that they would require, they would prefer to have it from a first world country, because they sometimes believe that coming out of Caricom member state might not be of the highest quality. You know, we've lived on the syndrome that if you come from states, then it's the best. No? So they're no different than ours. And so we've had that challenge. We've had challenges where they've gone to HOTED to request for the products to come, permission to import from outside of the region. I would want to say relatively successful with the aid of the Foreign Trade Ministry, who has been on top of it along with CPBL to ensure that the Belizean product stays as the first product on the market. Ironically, Belize now becomes the only nation, perhaps in the magnitude of what we produce citrus juices for now, and so even more so, we must be vigilant in ensuring that the other nations don't try and have products coming from other regions. That has tag team now with other companies in the region now trying to find blends, disguising the blend. So now it's not just an orange juice. They come and they say that they want an orange juice blend with carrot, for example. And then the answer would then be that Belize can't supply that because we don't have a carrot base. Member states can come and say that a blended product required in their country cannot be supplied by Belize. We are ready for that.
Okay.
You kind of touched on, for example, Trinidad and some of the challenges there. Can you provide an overall assessment of the various specific markets? What should exporters know about these specific markets?
Trinidad, particularly Trinidad and Jamaica, are the two most sophisticated marketplace in Caricom. They are almost mocking a first world requirement. I recall one instance in Trinidad where our products could not get in because we were using a word on the label that says 100% not pure and natural. And their definition of natural was a little different than what we define natural to be. And so we had some issues going in. So my first advice to any exporter is to ensure that you have checked and rechecked, double checked 3 times if you have to make sure that the labels that you're going to be putting inside the marketplace is acceptable by their quality people, by their equivalents of a Baja going into Trinidad particularly, and Jamaica. The other islands are pretty much close to Belize, aligned very closely to Belize, and perhaps they're not as sophisticated, and therefore we can move into those islands in a little easier manner. It's not to say that we can't get into Trinidad or we can't get into Jamaica. It just means that you have to ensure that you're on top of your game.
Okay.
In terms of the challenges faced in the regional supply chain, can you tell us a little bit more about those challenges pre and post COVID-19?
Challenges that we've faced is one of our major challenges here in Belize going into Caricom pre-COVID, and it affects us even more post-COVID, is the logistics routing. We do not have a logistics that is as easily accessible as it is from first world countries. For example, there's only 2 vessels that call to Belize that really makes call into Caricom. Although we have several shipping agents, they're all almost piggybacking on the same vessel at all times. So if that vessel fails, We were faced with a challenge only recently where a customer could bring a container load of juice, using our own example, all the way out of Spain for far less than what you could buy it for in Belize. And when we dissect that, the biggest part of that chunk was the transportation or the ocean freight side of the business. CPBL was able to meet with ocean freight providers and was able to negotiate some. Two things on that. Post-COVID would now be your customers are now reducing their demand for product because their markets are pretty much closed. With tourism closed in most of the island states, then buying power becomes a little less. And so where we would have supplied, let's say for argument's sake, 10 containers per week, we have seen that now reduced down to as low as 5. That in itself has an issue. And even on the 5 that is supplied, there's also the issue now of payment. Whether or not that customer is able to pay as they were before, readily and on the deadline for payment, and you would normally give 30 to 45 days credit, many times these credits are now being extended in excess of 60 days. That in itself is a problem for us on the ground here because then it affects our cash flow in that you don't have inflows to then offset the outflows that you're paying out for labor, for food costs, for electricity, for fuel, etc. Another challenge that comes with that is that in some cases, some of the customers are also faced with ability to have US currency. While they may have the ability to pay, they may not have the ability to have access to US currency. So their countries might be going through their own sets of being euros, being Canadian dollars, that would make up the difference to try and offset the receivables that are building. So those are the post-COVID challenges that we have.
Okay. Would you have any recommendation relating to that? Maybe perhaps something that you've seen other countries doing at this time?
Provisional approval for acceptance of Canadian and Euro. My understanding from an advisor is that as long as it's a hard currency recognized by Belize, it should not be a challenge for the banks to accept it. There's another customer in Belize that owes that same customer of ours. And so a recommendation would have been that the customer in Belize pays us in Belize currency and swapped off the debt. Okay. That one suggestion was made. Unfortunately, that does not bring foreign exchange. It only settles the receivable side of the business for CPBL and the payable side of the other side of that business, but it does not settle the issue of foreign exchange. That requires central bank approval, and to date, we have not been able to see that being possible in Belize as yet.
Oh, okay. What are some of the emerging opportunities you see in the Caricom market, and how can Belize take advantage of those opportunities?
Belize is an agricultural-based economy, particularly, and I see our nations in our member states in Caricom are not as agriculturally based as us, and so I believe that we can become, for the most part, the food basket of Caricom. We can grow pretty much anything that we see in Belize and that we have here, so we can actually be producing those and turn them into products that can be exported into Caricom. If you look at the list of demands that comes out of Caricom annually, and we see this from foreign trade almost on a quarterly basis, a lot of these products are able to be grown and processed in Belize. So I feel that that is an area that we in Belize can capitalize on. As a matter of fact, CPBL has already jumped on top of that. We've looked at now converting one of our facilities that was once a citrus plant, and with the advent of the disease, we have now, our citrus production has been reduced, and I'm not going to sing as if though the sky is falling on top of our heads, but we have also been planting to increase that. However, the plant that has been, we've taken one of those plants and converted into a tropical producing or processing plant. So as long as you have pineapples to deliver, we'll receive it, we'll process it. That same plant will also be used to process soursop, and both of these products already have a marketplace to be delivered into. So it's not an issue that we are venturing into something that does not have a marketplace. That's a clear cut. We're also looking at that same plant can also do other tropical fruits, passion fruit, guavas, papayas, the bananas that we're rejecting on the shores that can't go as fresh fruit. We can actually convert those into now processed purees. So we have jumped on that opportunity. All of this is with a view of having a market. We already established a market on the back end, so it's only the processing side of the business that is there. Opportunities, in my opinion, is there. It's for Belizeans now to jump on top of it.
Indeed, that is good news because we've seen the request for purees, fruit purees constantly. So that is indeed a good
That's
news.
where we are heading. That's where we're heading.
Okay. Describe the optimal marketing strategy for promoting in the region.
You know, maybe I'm old and traditional, and while you might not be seeing much grace, there is a lot of grace. So I am old. I travel quite often in Caricom to make sure that I keep in touch with my customers. I'm almost in there almost once per year with them. We do conferencing with them almost on a quarterly basis to make sure we stay on top of what their market is requiring. Matter of fact, only last week I had a call with one customer who was making a huge complaint to us, which I've not taken up as yet, where we're seeing products coming into a certain member state region that is coming out of the US, and we know that there has to be a duty issue that is not being paid there for them to be competing with our products on the shelves. We need to go into quoted with that because that's an issue that we need to take up. It is impossible for that product to come in from a extra regional state or country and still be able to compete on the shelves, having to be paying, if they were paying, duties because it's orange juice and that ought to only be coming out of Caricom region. That's a complaint. So that is to show you how I mentioned earlier crops, and I failed to have actually mentioned we're actually doing a trial run on limes.
Okay.
There's a huge abundance of lime in Belize, and we should be doing lime processing in another month. There's about 40 million limes available on the market right now that we need to process out for them and turn it into a juice, lime oil, and be able to export it out of Belize.
I know you've mentioned several commodities, fruits. What's the process of engaging with local farmers in developing these new products?
On these other crops, we've been doing that on our own. Quite often I'm on the media, and that seemed to have been a selling point many times because as soon as I'm off the media, I get calls to request a meeting with us. Not follow behind or beside, whichever the case is. And immediately after I came off the media a year ago, we had said to them that we were putting in a trial block of 15 acres, and the association had done a similar amount of about 10 or 12 acres. But if you know pineapple, pineapple grows, and then off each pineapple comes 3 suckers that can be replanted. Our aim was to take the suckers that would have came off our 15-acre block and replanted and expanded our planting acreage now to close to about 60 or 70 acres. For us, we took the initiative to have them have it rather than we replanting, because the industry is not about CPBL. The industry is about as many people as we can include to ensure that they have the opportunity equal to us to be able to participate in the dream that we see ahead. So we have not replanted our additional acres because we've been able to dish it off to some of the other growers and have them replanting. So come January, we did about 1 million pounds of pineapple this year so far. We've never done that. We've never done more than about 500 before. So how we've been liaising with growers is to try and meet one-on-one, personalizing it. Only this week I was with a certain grower trying to personalize their crop to come to be delivered to CPBL and to be able to process here. I think we should be able to sign off that contract as early as next week.
Okay.
So it's personalizing it as opposed to advertising it widely.
Okay.
What would be your number one advice on regional market access?
The one day that you fail to deliver, your market space is gone. You've lost it. It's a competitive market out there. It's a competitive market to maintain space on the shelves. There is no explanation to say to a customer or a buyer of your product that the ship did not call in Belize. Although it's beyond your control, many times we have to find all the way possible to get that product in, because once you miss that space on the shelf, when we go into Caricom and you look at the competing juices against ours, you will see the size of the range of products that you have in there, and so you would appreciate them more, while we cannot then afford to have any slip in terms of that. So consistent quality, consistent supply chain must be your number one game. However, what we've been doing recently is to try and network with some of our smaller Belizean entities who are export ready, but perhaps not in a position to export an entire full container for whatever reason that may be. We've been able to take some of our product and some of their product to introduce it into new market areas, smaller regions, and to allow for their product to get exposure as well on the shelves. That has an advantage for two of us. It has an advantage for CPBL because the smaller island states might not be able to take more than 3 containers of juice per year. But if you take a half of a container and load it with other product, you'll see almost 6 containers moving over the course of the year as opposed to just 3.
Yes.
We've been able to try and utilize some of our services as well, where we have a certification program that is very expensive to have. That's another recommendation that we're making to some colleagues in Belize as well. Okay. That's to try and expand our market base into Caricom.
That is indeed great news as well. Can you provide any final words on making it count in Caricom?
I love my Caricom brothers and sisters, but I do also love my Belizean brothers and sisters. And so it is important for us to have the Belizean product marked on the shelves wherever we turn inside Caricom. And so our aim is to try and ensure that we have that as much as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Usher, for joining us on Industry Chat.